All right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's afternoon session, Collaborating for Family Outcomes, FRYSC, and Public Libraries Uniting for Community Impact. And just so everyone knows, a recorded version of this webinar will be available at a later date after the captions have been edited. So please keep an eye out for the updates on the KYAC listserv. I would like to introduce today's presenters. We have three. We have Emily Keeley, Heather McCarty, and Maggie Myers, and they are all from the Family Resource and Youth Services Centers here in Kentucky. And I'm going to let them each introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about them, and then they can go right into their presentation.
Yeah, so good afternoon. Oh,
go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, my name is Emily Keeley. So I actually work for the Department for Public Health as the Early Childhood Social Emotional Consultant, primarily working with the Kentucky Strengthening Families Initiative. Thank you.
And my name is Heather McCarty. I'm a Regional Program Manager for Region 2 for the Division of Family Resource and Youth Service Centers, and I am located in the western part of Kentucky. Thank you.
And my name is Maggie Myers. I am a regional program manager also for the Division of Family Resource and Youth Service Centers, and I serve 10 counties in South Central Kentucky. We are really excited to be with you today and share some information with you. The first thing that I'd like to share are our objectives for our time together today. First, we hope that each participant or individual that's viewing this as a recording by the end of the session will be able to identify some strategies to collaborate with your local family resource and youth services centers. And also, we hope that you will be able to recognize some of the everyday actions in your work that build protective factors in the families that you interact with and serve. So I apologize. I originally built this presentation using Zoom reactions. My understanding is that Blackboard Collaborations also has a reactions function. However, this is a new technology to myself and my colleagues. I would love to know how familiar those in the room with us today are with Family Resource and Youth Services Centers. So instead of reactions, if we could use the chat function just to get a little feedback and help us as presenters be familiar with the participants in our session. So if we could just get a little feedback in chat, maybe you don't know who FRYSCs are, but you know, those are some pretty fun people. So maybe they sound like your kind of people. Your FRYSCs are rock stars. You work together all the time. Oh, and I do see those reactions in chat. That is fantastic and very helpful feedback. I love what FRYSCs do, but don't know how they connect to my work. Or finally, I've collaborated with FRYSC before, but we could work together more. It looks like we have a variety of responses. Thank you all so much for that engagement. Okay, it looks like most of our audience today at least is somewhat familiar with FRYSC or has worked with the FRYSC coordinators in their area before. Just for those who are a little less familiar, I want to give you a little bit of background on what FRYSC is, what they do, what coordinators do every day in their work, and a little bit about where, as a regional program manager, you know, I provide training and support to 71 FRYSC coordinators in my area of the state. So I feel like there are some very natural opportunities for collaboration between FRYSC and public libraries. So I want to share some of those with you. But really quickly, Family Resource and Youth Services Centers were established as a part of the Kentucky Education Reform Act of 1990. The purpose of FRYSC, the mission of FRYSC, is to provide some school-based student and family support. Coordinators are responsible for identifying barriers to student achievement, Family resource centers work with families who are expecting. So from prenatal, before a child is born, all the way through that child's 5th grade year in public school. And youth services centers, those coordinators serve children in 6th grade in Kentucky public schools all the way through their transition to adult life after graduation in high school. Coordinators, like I mentioned, they work to identify and help families overcome barriers to student achievement, and they work within the guidelines of a set of components. The list you see on the screen is not exhaustive. That is just some of the components where the goals of that component. Again, my experience working with family resource centers and youth services centers, I think it is a natural place to partner and collaborate with public libraries. And I'm going to very briefly tell you why. Families in Training is a component in which coordinators are helping to establish a foundation for educational success. And they target that prenatal group all the way through 3 years old. So there's a lot of working with parents of very, very young children at this stage. Family literacy is actually composed of 4 elements. There's child time, parent and child together time, and adult education. And the goal of this component is for families to achieve self-sufficiency and for us, to help break that cycle of poverty. Preschool childcare is bigger than just childcare. This also includes any developmentally appropriate early learning experiences, really targeting that 2 and 3-year-old population. Out of school childcare, we consider that after school care or perhaps summer or other breaks from school. Again, it is more than just childcare. We're also talking about enrichment activities. So this is anything that helps us reduce unsupervised time, increase social skills among students, or promote the continuation of learning outside of the school hours. Next is health services. Family Resource and Youth Service Centers operate on a whole school, whole child, whole community model. And this includes elements of family engagement as well as community involvement. And finally, career exploration really focuses on preparation for future employment and successful transition to adult life. So of all of the components that FRYSCs work in, these are just some of them where I think there is a natural opportunity for collaboration between FRYSCs and public libraries. Also, FRYSCs operate using standards of family support. These are 3 of the 5 standards, and again, I see a lot of parallels in these standards of family support and the competencies for librarians, which we're going to look at in just a second. So when we're talking about family strengthening, this is really supporting a family so that they can be strong, healthy, and safe. Community strengthening is about developing strong and healthy communities. Diversity, equity, and inclusion really involves valuing, respecting, and embracing diversity while also advancing equity and inclusion through the work that we do. The guiding principles and goals of FRYSC, I just wanted to focus on a couple of those. All children can learn, and most at high levels, and a community approach will be used, again, to accomplish all of those goals of the action components. Family Resource and Youth Service Centers really rely heavily on community partners to help connect families with community agencies that can help, support them and serve them. So some of the work that we did to kind of prepare and put this together was to look for parallels in the goals of public libraries and specifically those that serve children and families. And so within the competencies, as I was reading and learning about those, I really pulled just these 6 bullet points as what I believe to be very strong parallels. These are slightly paraphrased just for space on the slide. But I see such a clear connection and opportunity for libraries and library goals and FRYSC goals to really come along side by side and work together to accomplish these things.
All right, so my name is Emily Keeley, and I'm going to be sharing information on the next couple of slides with you guys. So when Maggie and Heather and I kind of came together and we were discussing putting together this content to share with you all today, when we were chatting, it was pretty evident that we had some common goals. And on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Kentucky Strengthening Families Initiative and protective factors and how those are aligned with public libraries and with the FRYSC and the work that you all do. But when we think about working towards common goals, all the work that we do, we're wanting to help families and children succeed and to thrive in their environments. And so these two kind of examples come to mind: developing safe, productive, and healthy adults. And this is definitely a common goal to help explain like the why behind the work that we do serving children. And I'll add like youth and families. So within family resource youth service centers and with public libraries, one of the common goals is providing a safe environment where individuals can learn and grow. So the ultimate goal here is to support and develop safe and productive and healthy adults. We know from research that individuals really do thrive when they feel safe within their environments, and I definitely feel like this is a common goal between FRYSC and public libraries and the work that you do. So another kind of commonality with with our goals is building programs that encourage families to really seek support and utilize services that will help them be more resilient, to help strengthen their bond with their family members, and also to improve their quality of life. And so this just kind of highlights the second bullet here when we think about like an overarching common goal between the two programs. So really like the why behind our programming are like our everyday actions that support families and children. So these strategies support and provide how families really navigate the ups and the downs within their life. So in other words, what we're wanting to do here is really promote and encourage what we call protective factors. And I'm going to jump into a little bit more about what those are. So my work with the Department for Public Health is working with the Kentucky Strengthening Families Initiative, specifically around these 6 protective factors that are highlighted as the leaves on this tree visual that you see. And the cool thing about Kentucky Strengthening Families, and when we talk about protective factors, is these protective factors are really adaptable to any family serving organization that does work with families and children. So family resource youth services centers, absolutely. Public libraries, absolutely. So with Kentucky Strengthening Families, we are a statewide initiative, and our goal is to collaborate with those community partners to help support and embed these protective factors in the work that you do. So we're going to chat a little bit later on in this presentation about specific examples or strategies with collaborations between public libraries and FRYSC, and really kind of highlight the protective factors, kind of connecting those to a protective factor. So I want to share just a little bit about what protective factors are. So the protective factors that you see here on the tree, these come from a national evidence-based framework, which is called the Strengthening Families Protective Factors Framework. I do want to share too that the national model has 5 protective factors, and Kentucky is unique because we added a 6th protective factor of nurturing and attachment, and that's what you see here on the orange leaf of the tree. So in Kentucky, we really value and we promote embedding and understanding these 6 protective factors with families and children that we serve. And so the idea is that when protective factors are present within an individual's life, that individual they're going to have the resources and the strategies to be able to thrive. What protective factors really kind of help do is mitigate risk and kind of help us manage stress and those coping skills so we can be stronger individuals. And the ultimate goal as a parent and caregiver is that we are the best that we can be as a parent and caregiver for our children. And so with the collaboration with FRYSC and with public libraries, all the work that you do can be directed to one or more of these protective factors. So like I said, Kentucky Strengthening Families does work from an evidence-based framework, and I want to share just a few highlights. So really kind of promoting strong families and healthy development. So when we think of like this protective factor of social connections and social emotional competence of children and maybe even concrete supports, these are all protective factors that I can see and highlight within public libraries, that what you're doing is building those connections, those strong connections with families and children, so they are strong and healthy and they're able to thrive. Also, like partnering with all families to celebrate differences. And this is an important component of being able to thrive as well. Buffering families against toxic stress. So this is ideally what protective factors are. So they are kind of a buffer to help mitigate what those risks are. We can't always eliminate or reduce risks that an individual may face, but what we do have the capacity and the ability to do is build up those protective factors. So kind of envision like a pendulum, and we're wanting to kind of shift that pendulum to be heavier on the protective factor side. So all the programming that you do within a public library, and then also with FRYSC, you're helping shift that pendulum to be heavier on that protective factor side. We're also wanting to build knowledge and skills for system change, and then also creating safe and nurturing environments for people to have those nurturing relationships. So I mentioned before that individuals really thrive when they feel safe within their environment. And so that's a crucial component of the programming and the work that you all do with public libraries and then also with FRYSC. So these programming collaborations between public libraries and FRYSC really enhance the impact of these 6 protective factors that you see highlighted on this tree visual. So building protective factors really supports that common goal with those best practices that are identified under those competencies for librarians that Maggie was referencing before.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. And I get the opportunity to share different opportunities for partnership with you all that will focus on building protective factors. I get to share a series of examples of best practice collaboration between FRYSC and Kentucky Public Libraries with an emphasis on the protective factors and everyday actions. And this collaboration benefits FRYSC, it benefits Kentucky Public Libraries, and it also benefits our families and the communities that we serve. This partnership, it's bigger than any of us here. It's an opportunity to increase family engagement and positively impact families' well-being, which research shows can help prevent child abuse and neglect. And I believe Emily or Maggie have a document that they're going to share in the chat for you all that you can have to reference at a later time after this presentation. So I'm going to jump into the first activity. This activity was called Get Out and Move Summer Program. And then each one of the examples I show you will have a description of the activity, the outcome, and then Emily's going to share with us how a certain protective factor was embedded into that program. So the FRYSC partnered with a local library to offer fun outdoor activities and games in different places in the community twice a week over the summer. And I love this activity because the FRYSC and the library actually went out into the community. They went to meet families where they are. For example, if you have a local trailer park or a local apartment complex or any local neighborhood that you can go out to and provide services where the families are is so beneficial, and the families really love that. The children took home a ball or game in addition to a book to continue exercising and reading. And then the outcome was participating children had an increased access to fun ways to get exercise in the summer when they're not in school. And then Emily, do you want to share how that protective factor connects?
Yeah, so the feature protective factor that we can really kind of see with this particular activity is that protective factor of social connections. And so I kind of want to highlight again how social connections is related to this activity and how it can be seen as a protective factor. So with this particular activity, there is an opportunity for children to engage in a positive experience with their friends and with their peers. So the adults that were involved with this activity, made it a point that the environment it was a positive environment, which we know is crucial. Kind of going back to that safety piece. So when we feel safe within our environments, then we're going to thrive. And so that's what was provided with this particular activity. It also, the adults who were involved in planning this activity and facilitating this activity really provided a sense of belonging with the children that were there. Also helping children really feel connected with each other, if it's their friends group or their peers, and then also a sense of feeling connected with the adults that were present. People outside of their family, the children's family supported them. So they had the support of a caring adult that was not a family member. And this kind of goes back to what we know about positive childhood experiences and how children really thrive when they have the support and the connection with an adult who is a non-family member. And so this is really kind of that connection and why this particular activity was very supportive of this protective factor of social connections.
Great, thank you, Emily. And feel free if, as we're going through some of these examples, if you've done an event like this before, please share that in the chat or give us a thumbs up. These are all examples that FRYSC coordinators shared with us from across the state. We ask coordinators to submit impact reports each year, and a lot of coordinators submit these impact reports with the collaboration of their local library. So that's where we got these examples from. So some of you may have been involved in some of these activities. So the next activity is Learn How to Read Together. This was a family literacy event. The FRYSC partnered with local library to host a family literacy event at the school. The resource teacher held a mini session on the importance of reading with your child. The local librarian assisted parents with applying for library cards. Attendees took home a parent-child read together book to read at home. So this activity, took place at the school, which is great as well. The parents reported being reintroduced to reading and learning how to engage with their child's reading. And the protective factor that we want to highlight here is the knowledge of child development.
Yeah, so just a little bit about this protective factor knowledge of child development is really, as a parent, caregiver, or just an adult in a child's life, it's really understanding how children grow and develop. And so I love this activity because it was an opportunity to provide some educational component to parents and caregivers to really talk about the importance, why it's important to read with your child. So you had that educational component. It was done in a safe environment, a supportive environment, a really strength-based approach to talking to parents and caregivers about the importance of reading, where we see the evidence of the outcome that parents were reported being reintroduced to that reading and learning how to engage with their child. And so when we think of knowledge of child development, this is really a situation where parents were given the knowledge to understand how their child grows and develop, understand the importance of literacy development, and then giving the strategies, giving the resources to be able to do that and continue on with this activity at home. So I love this because it provided that fun, positive experience between the child and then the adult in that child's life who attended this activity together. And they really helped provide and help those parents, caregivers gain that understanding of the importance of language and literacy development.
And then our next example included the summer feeding program, which I'm sure many of you have in your communities. It was called summer reading and feeding events. And I encourage coordinators all the time to collaborate with their summer feeding program. And those coordinators, they'll go off campus or they do things on campus. But I think it would be a great idea to collaborate the library, the FRYSC coordinator, and the summer feeding event to offer those services. The FRYSC partnered with the local library and school food service staff to coordinate summer reading events at summer feeding outreach stops. And any place can really be an outreach stop. Your organization just applies to be a site. FRYSC coordinator distributed additional food support on request, and then the increased participation in both summer feeding program through the school district and summer reading program at the local library was the positive outcome. Our protective factor was the concrete support in times of need.
Yeah, so just kind of what this protective factor says in this title, a concrete support in a time of need. So being able to provide a food source and providing that service for children is helping meet a basic need that an individual, a family, or a child may have. And so just by that definition, it meets what we know about this protective factor of concrete supports in times of need. This was a strength-based approach, which I love this opportunity of a strength-based approach to be able to provide an opportunity to provide a meal, to provide food, but then also having the opportunity to connect it to a local library. And what Heather said, even if a local library was the site for the feeding event, then it's giving an opportunity for that family or for that child who was participating in this activity or picking up food to then maybe attend the public library. If they didn't have a library card, they could go in the library and get that. It's an opportunity for the parent and the child, or the child and maybe a peer or a friend to go into a library. And again, this kind of goes back to this safe environment aspect of it too, where a public library provides that safe environment for families and children to be able to thrive. And so that's why this particular activity really kind of met this protective factor, or what we know of concrete support in times of need.
Thank you, Emily. And this next one was one of my favorite ones, called the Pirate Prep Program. So I really thought the name was catchy and it just sounded really exciting. And once we started reading through it, this was one of my favorite ones. The FRYSC partners with local public library and early childhood council to coordinate a monthly program targeting children from birth through age 5 to encourage engagement in learning activities with their caregivers and peers. And remember, Maggie was talking about our core components in the beginning, and we do have a families and training component where we want to meet the needs of those those children that are birth to 5 years old. The program offered activities centered around 6 Let's Learn Kentucky areas: read together, talk together, count together, play together, move together, and connect together. The outcome was that the parents indicated increased knowledge and resources for kindergarten readiness, as well as increased growth in their child's knowledge and social skills. And then our protective factor here was cognitive and social emotional competence of children. And I know Emily's going to share with you, you'll see that these protective factors do overlap. You know, we just featured one, but this could really meet more than one protective factor. But I'm going to let Emily speak on this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So cognitive and social emotional competence of children is my favorite protective factor. And I think this kind of goes back to, my background is working with young children and families in supporting social emotional development in young children, and really helping caregivers in children's life to understand how we can support the social emotional development within young children. And I think this is a great activity that I want to highlight a few things. There's multiple different community partners involved with this activity that made it a successful activity. And I love that piece of it as well. And so you're getting that community connection together to, again, what's our common goal? Like our common goal here is we want to support children and families so those children and families succeed. And this is definitely a program that highlights, or an activity that highlighted that common goal. So with this, I love again how with this activity, the parents and caregivers the outcome is they indicated an increase in knowledge and resources for kindergarten readiness, as well as increased growth in their child's knowledge and social skills, which I think is a crucial, that's a huge outcome from an event. So what this is telling me is that during this activity, during this event, it was very evident that what was shared with parents and caregivers was the importance of the educational piece, because we only know what we know until we can learn something different, right? And so this was an opportunity to engage and educate parents on some very important developmental kind of milestones that young children have. It was also evident in this outcome that the folks that facilitated this activity really highlighted the importance of social emotional development and those social skills, and kind of what that means, and how to support children to increase those social skills given from the outcome that we saw with this particular activity. So with cognitive social emotional competence of children, this particular protective factor is really looking at how we can help children kind of manage and express their thoughts and their feelings. It's all about kind of that emotional support, and also kind of helping children be able to be a good friend. And the one thing that I know from social emotional competency is this is something that kids aren't born with. It's like we as the adults in children's life, we have to teach children these social skills. And this was an activity that really helped support that, giving parents, caregivers the resources and the means to be able to support that social development with their child during this activity, during this event, but also given resources so they can continue to provide the support at home. And so I think this is a great activity.
Okay, our next one is a family wellness night, and I hope you are getting some great ideas or examples from some of these that we're sharing with you all. The FRYSC invited community partners, including their local library, to set up and provide activities for families, including vegetable garden planting, worry stone painting, yoga, dancing, family portraits, free haircuts, and information on physical and mental health care and treatment. I know a lot of our FRYSC collaborate with the UK Extension offices as well throughout the state, and I'm sure some of you all do too, and they offer a lot of these great services as well. So even more collaborative partners coming together. The participating families were gifted engagement kits, including board games, movie passes, and pizza coupons to take home with them. The families reported increased connection with each other and with the school, and we really wanted to highlight parental resilience on this protective factor.
Yeah, so I think this is a very unique activity, and I love the description of this activity and how we can support resilience with families that we serve. And it's also showing kind of this connection with FRYSC in the local libraries. But what I want to say about like parental resilience is really we all go through stress, and it's really kind of how we kind of manage that stress. What are the tools that we have kind of in our toolbox that we can pull from when we are experiencing like a stressful event or a challenge? And one of those kind of tools in the toolbox is practicing self-care. And so I love the description of this activity is an opportunity for parents and caregivers to help work on their self-care. What I know of, because I'm a parent myself, is if I'm not the best that I can be, then I'm I'm just not the best parent that I can be if I don't feel good and if I don't take care of myself. And there's multiple, that's very broad. There's multiple ways that we can take care of ourselves in providing self-care. But I love that this particular activity that the families that attended, they were gifted engagement kits to be able to utilize at home. And then the evident outcome here is that the families reported an increase in connection with each other and then with the school. So kind of going back to what Heather was saying is, yes, we highlighted this protective factor, parental resilience, but there's a lot of other protective factors that can be seen within all of these different activities. And that's kind of why Kentucky Strengthening Families utilize that tree visual with the leaves, is kind of think of us as kind of nourishing an individual, like the individual is a tree, and we're providing these activities, these resources, these strategies to the individual to help kind of grow and strengthen and kind of nourish the tree, so their leaves, those protective factor leaves, kind of grow and flourish as well. And so again, this was really a great opportunity that really highlighted and focused on resilience, and specifically kind of talking about the importance of self-care, and then also those social connections as part of the resiliency protective factor as well.
And our last example was titled Play with Purpose. And the coordinator partnered with her local library to offer a 9-week program targeting children from birth through age 3. The parents completed the Ages and Stages questionnaire, the ASQ, and were provided with books and educational toys, activities to accompany them. Parents were taught how to engage their little ones educationally. So 100% of participating children had improvements in developmental milestones according to the ASQ. And like Emily said, this one really focused on nurturing and attachment, which was one of the protective factors that Kentucky added, one of the leaves added to the tree.
Yeah, so I love this activity too, and the program that put on this activity did a wonderful job, and the outcomes kind of speak for themselves. But with nurturing attachment, this is all kind of helping children. We want children to feel loved and safe. And the best way for us to do that is through developing positive connections with our young children. And again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, kind of that sense of safety as well. And this was an opportunity to help build those positive connections. And also it's teaching parents and caregivers, when we talk about like the Ages and Stages questionnaire, which is a developmental questionnaire, we're giving parents and caregivers those resources to help kind of strengthen those developmental milestones that their child has. And it's through those opportunities that those connections, those positive connections, are going to be formed between the adult and the child, which is really why this particular activity is featuring this protective factor of nurturing and attachment.
Now Maggie's going to give you a really great way to collaborate with your local FRYSC coordinator.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the guiding principles of FRYSC is that a community focus shall be developed, and one of our standards is community strengthening. So kind of to align with that, every single family resource or youth services center is required to hold an advisory council. And this is a governing body that's an advisory in nature. They meet 5 times a year, every other month when school is in session, and there are different categories of membership that a coordinator must have on their council, and one of those is community representatives. The public library staff, children's librarians, teen, tween, youth librarians are all fantastic collaborative partners for FRYSC. And being present at those advisory council meetings as a voting member or perhaps as a guest is a great way to get FaceTime with your coordinator. It's a great way to, have some of those conversations about collaborative partnership opportunities. families. So I would just encourage you, if you have never attended an advisory council meeting, to reach out to, a local coordinator in your area, and see if that might be a way to get involved with your center. Because I mentioned reaching out to your local coordinators, I'm going to share another link in the chat. This is a link to our division's website. If you are not familiar with the FRYSC coordinators in your area, this link will take you directly to a subpage of our website that identifies the FRYSC regions. And down the right-hand column under additional information, there's actually a link that will take you to a database of center information. So that is organized by region, but it has a list of every single center and coordinator across the state of Kentucky, and it is maintained and kept pretty up to date. So if you are looking for the name or contact information of a coordinator in your city or county, that can be a resource to you. So as we are wrapping up this afternoon, I wanted to check back in on our objectives. We hope that we have provided you with some examples of best practice programming that's happening across the state involving collaborations between public libraries and family resource or youth services centers. But again, those strategies for collaboration, there's such a unique and special common language in both the guiding principles and goals of FRYSC, the action components of FRYSC, and those competencies of public librarians that serve children. I just think that communication to identify those parallels and those ways in which libraries and centers can support one another, as Heather said earlier so beautifully, that it's good for centers and it's good for libraries, and even bigger, it's good for students and families. And that's kind of what brings me to our second objective. We spent a lot of time introducing the concept of protective factors, reviewing what each of those is, providing examples of what those look like in everyday actions. And so I hope that we have accomplished both of those objectives together. We wanted to take just a moment of reflection and kind of ask for your all's feedback if there are ways that you see yourself able to collaborate with your local FRYSC, ways that you can build those protective factors in the students or children and families that you serve, or are there barriers or challenges that you have experienced in attempts to collaborate with your local family resource and youth services centers? We would just love to give you a moment to think about those things. Perhaps if you have a question or have an answer to one of those questions, either an opportunity to collaborate or a potential challenge or barrier that you see, feel free to come off of mute and share that with us, or drop it into chat as Heather had put into the chat for you. Okay, I'm not seeing any responses, and that is okay. These reflection times are really designed to be more thought exercises. Hopefully that though thinking about the possible collaboration, you can kind of start to develop a plan that can be implemented to encourage collaboration. Or if there are barriers and challenges that exist, hopefully you can start thinking about how to possibly overcome those. Finally, if there are any questions about any of the content presented today, about how to access or reach out to your FRYSC coordinators in your area, we would love to answer those for you in the very little time we have left. And Emily's, Heather, and my contact information is all visible on the screen. Feel free to reach out to us individually if something comes to mind later on.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Maggie. And thank you, Emily, Heather, and Maggie, for coming today and presenting on this topic. And hopefully people are walking away with some really awesome ideas. I am going to stop the recording